Thank you for listening to the Russell Realty Minute. I'm Evan Russell. This is our final part 3 of negotiations. And it's a term that comes up quite a bit. I'm going to speak on it just a minute here. And it's the term, the buyers are playing games, the sellers are playing games. Well, let's just put it, as we talked about in the first couple episodes, first couple editions of this, the buyer clearly wants to buy the house. They wouldn't have visited it. They wouldn't have taken the time to put the offer together, to put money in escrow, for them to just, quote-unquote, play games, right? I hear that quite a bit, and it's actually pretty disturbing and kind of frustrates me a little bit. I don't usually express my opinion on in this particular podcast, but in this one I'm going to. You have to understand, at the end of the day, the buyer wants to buy the house, the seller wants to sell the house, the listing agent wants to sell the house, the attorney wants to close on a deal, the buyer agent wants to close on a deal. There's gold at the end of everybody's rainbow. So the idea during the negotiations that the buyers are playing games or the sellers are playing games or they're doing head games, or all that stuff is kind of just silliness, right? Negotiation tactics, there's no right or wrong way to negotiate. If the buyer wants this, it's up for the buyer to articulate that to the buyer agent to articulate that to the listing agent to articulate that to the seller, and then it goes back. It's kind of when we're in grade school and we kind of pass the secret down the line. You know, the rabbit jumped in the hole. You know, the rabbit, ate food out of the bowl, right? It's kind of that sort of thing. So transition and tone and message can get disrupted between the four parties. Then if you put attorneys on board, you've got 3 parties on each side. So when a buyer agent requests from a listing agent and the listing agent goes back to the buyer agent, we have to just put out of our mind that the buyer's playing games, the sellers are playing games. Negotiation is actually a form of a game. It's how hard can I push on one side or the other to get what I want that you will agree to. Right? Athletes do it all the time. I want $10 million. We only want to pay you $5 million. At what point are they going to come in the middle? Right? So that's not the team and the player playing games with each other. That's determining what they think is valuable, what's important to them. And that is not defined as playing games. That's defined as hard-nosed negotiations. Some people have a strong stomach for that. Some people don't have have a very weak stomach for it. But at the end of the day, you always have to remember, going back to the part 1 and part 2 of this little series, you have to put yourself in a seller's shoes. You have to put yourself in the buyer's shoes. You have to understand the motivation of the seller. You have to understand the motivation of the buyer. And when you put all things together and you keep it rational and you don't make decisions at 9:30 at night, you have a fresh, clean mind to think about things, things will come together. Playing games is not the motivation of the buyer. The buyer does not put an offer on your house to play games with you and start messing with your head. They just want what they want. They want what they think is fair for the value they're paying. And you as a seller obviously want what you think is fair for the amount you're receiving. That doesn't translate into playing games. That translates into negotiation.